All right, we're back for now the second aspect of this market revolution, and that is the new global situations and how people are reacting. So let's jump into it. All right, so we have to stop for a moment. A lot is happening in the world. Markets are opening up, cities and landscape is changing, railroads are being laid. There's a lot happening. So we've talked mostly about Europe, France, Western Europe, a little bit of United States, and we've kind of limited to that. But what about the rest of the world? I mean, Western Europe, United States is such a small portion of the global community. What is the rest of the world doing at this time? So first, let's see if they're going to adapt or if they're going to rebel, if they're going to be problems. And I want to look first at the Islamic Empire. I want to look at how did the Islamic world sort of adapt? And they did. They adapted to these advances and these changes. I mean, roller coaster, come down the top, boom, they're coming down. They have to react. They have to adapt. Otherwise, they're going to get eaten up. And why? Look at where they are located geographically. They are right up against Western Europe. Western Europe is all about in their business. And so if these folks do not do something, they're going to be in a world of hurt. Or France and England are just going to take them over and push them out of the way. At least that's the fear. So what do they do? Well, the Ottoman Empire really is the heart, the big mover shaker at this time. And this is the sort of like the layout in 1829 of the Ottoman Empire. See, it covers quite a bit. It's mostly Egypt. It goes across the northern portion of Africa. It reaches all the way into Macedonia, moving into some of what are now Slavic states, Slavic countries, across Turkey, which was Anatolia at that time, and then down into the regions in that northern part of what is now Iran. Those are all there, all part of that. But as we move into these 1830s and 40s and 50s, certain movers and shakers start to rise up. The Arabian leaders sort of rise up. They're the ones in that purple, modern day Saudi Arabia. But that particular area takes back Mecca, takes back Medina, these holy places of Islam and that Islamic heritage. But not much behind that is this revival of Egypt and its great power, its great history. So everything in that light blue becomes part of the Egyptian force, and one of the greatest kings. He's considered like the founder of Egyptian rule. The Egyptian nation is Muhammad Ali, and yes, Muhammad Ali is named after this guy. If I get the name, I'm obviously Muhammad Ali, but this guy was strong. He was very tough, and he built up this huge Mediterranean navy, and he made some huge advances. He controls all of the Nile Valley. He controls both sides of the Red Sea, and then all the way up through what would be considered modern-day Palestine and Israel, all the way up and even into the southern part of modern-day Turkey. He had control of all of that area. And by 1869, although he has passed away by then, he passed away in the 1840s, but the Suez Canal is completed in 1869. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Suez Canal is like the Panama Canal, but it connects the Mediterranean Sea and then the top finger of the Red Sea. So as the Red Sea comes up and splits, and the Mediterranean Sea is up here, the Suez Canal ends up working and connecting to the deal. Now, is that a big deal? Who? Yes, that's a massive big deal. If you think about what kind of time saver it is, if you could take product into the Mediterranean, down into the Suez Canal, and then out the Persian Gulf into the Indian Ocean, how much time that would save you, how much money it would save you, than going all the way around down to the very southern part of Africa, all the way back up and then into the Indian Ocean. This was massively important, and it changed the dynamic of the world at that time. But here's the warning. There's a warning that goes along with this. England and France don't want the Ottoman Empire to kind of crumble and break off so that there's individual people, individual kingdoms. They don't want Egypt to gain more and become its own sort of power center at that time. Why? Why not? Well, because the Ottoman Empire is the buffer. It's the thing that's keeping Russia back. In order for Russia to get access to the Mediterranean, to have access through the Black Sea, through Istanbul, in through those straits, to get to the Mediterranean Sea and become a viable trade competitor, the Ottoman Empire is pushing back on it and saying, no, you're not going to get it. We're going to own it. We're going to control who goes through our straits. So England and France actually come to the aid of the Ottoman Empire to kind of keep Egypt down, to keep it where it belongs, which is going to play out again later on when Russia actually comes in to take over those northern territories, because it wants Constantinople, it wants Istanbul, it wants to have control of that strait to get out of the Black Sea. And again, England and France are going to come in and save the day and keep Russia in her place. You can see it here. So see the circle? That is the straits. That's Constantinople and Dardanelles Straits. That's how Russia would get into the Black Sea and then work its way into the Mediterranean. Now with 1869 coming along and the completion of the Suez Canal, now if Russia gains control, that would be even faster, even more powerful. Russia, with all of its resources, could seriously put a dent and hurt the profitabilities of England and France and other Western European countries. So, what things happened during this time? Between 1850 and 1870, between that region, we have the Tanzimat, or the Ottoman reforms. These are attempts by the Ottoman Empire to sort of hold itself together. They're trying to model themselves more like England and France and their way of running. There's a move toward a constitution of some sort, a constitutional government. They develop a parliament. By 1870, they have a full parliament, full Congress kind of thing that's working at it. And they extend civil rights to more and more people, even though it's a Muslim country, and it can have very restrictive sort of constraints on different people in society, at least to Western perspective. They begin to start opening things up a little bit. So that takes place. What else is happening in this region of the world? Well, the Safavid dynasty collapses in 1770s, and the Qajar, they sort of rise up to replace them. This is kind of a Turkish horseman. They are warrior class kind of people. They are using some of the helps from Europe. And what are they doing? If you see, they're in the green and red. They're pushing back on Russia. They are becoming a help, so to speak, during this time. And they have learned to adapt, as did the rest of the Ottoman Empire, to some of the things that are going on, these advancements, these cultural changes, these industrial changes, these market changes. And they're starting to adapt and use it. And it's working. It works. They end up pushing back on Russia quite a bit. But what about Africa? There's another region. Well, you see that purple on top? That's still Islam. That's part of the Islamic world. But if you look at the rest of this, Portugal holds just a little section on the southern east coast, and then sort of like directly across from it on the west coast. That's sort of as much as it holds. It's not very deep into the country. Britain is holding that bottom spot, the southern or South Africa tip, and France has that little point on the very western side. There is an Islamic country, Oman, who has captured the coastal areas on the eastern side. Portugal is there primarily to maintain the slave trade. They're not selling slaves to America anymore. Now they're selling slaves more and more to the Islamic world, who has not changed its slave habits. They are still going at it. And in fact, they are still going at it to this day in certain aspects. I wouldn't say that it is Islamic based anymore, but many of the Middle Eastern countries and even within the United States, it's still a problem. So, if you notice, as I said before, they're not penetrating into the heart of Africa right now. They're still on the outskirts. But between 1830 and 1850s, 1860s, a new industry is sort of developing, and that's the pharmaceutical industry. This is the age of quinine and the age of aspirin and things like that are going to allow Europeans to travel upriver into these rivers, again by steamboat, into these areas and to draw out resources to dominate these particular areas and find new either supplies, new raw resources, or new markets. And that is what happens. So by 1900s, 90% of all of African countries are controlled, colonized by European nations. That's scary. That's pretty scary. So, what about the Far East? What about China? What about Japan? What about those areas? Are they sort of so far out, so far east that the market revolution hasn't touched them somehow? Don't think so. That's what's coming up next in part 2 of New Global Situations. See you in a minute.